The Bitcoin sector is now quite active because of this SEC's recent litigation against Coinbase and Finance, and we have a few important updates to highlight first. You guys, these two cases are going to be enormous. I have some critical information to share with you about these two cases to present you with clarity is advancing, even though the SEC appears to be ratcheting up its enforcement activities everywhere. They, like cryptocurrencies, are up against a brick wall. Why do I want to speak with you? I'm more persuaded than I've ever been. That legislation governing this asset class will be implemented very soon because we are currently winning the struggle against the authorities. Guys, not many people currently share your viewpoint. Hence, I believe you will want to see this. Finally, near the end of the film, I want to show you some strange documents involving Ripple and the US Federal Reserve. Guys, I am completely taken aback by the abundance of documents being disclosed at this time that place Ripple near the Federal Reserve and its platform. Make sure to watch the entire video to catch that. I promise you won't want to miss that. As a result, I'd like to start this video by really presenting an opinion that I don't think many people presently hold, that we are currently winning the battle against regulators. Now I realize that may come as a surprise. Tell you in light of this SEC's odd activities over the last few weeks, but folks, I was actually on Twitter with this guy earlier today. Balaji is a well-known character. He was one of the classiest orators, especially regarding cryptocurrencies in general and Bitcoin in particular. The SEC is only taking action against us because they can no longer ignore us. Cryptocurrencies were initially fairly small, and the sector was quite specialized. All of these different regulators might then say, you know what, we're not concentrating on this. However, as cryptocurrency grows in popularity and mainstream acceptance around the world, regulators are finally being compelled to stop avoiding this asset class and confront it head-on. It won't be ideal, and we'll have to go through the wars and conflicts that Ripple is currently going through with the SEC, but in the end, this was a necessary step that we would eventually have to take if we wanted to see widespread adoption. Simply establishing that this asset class is ready for prime time is a significant step forward. And of course, we must consult with the authorities, who are not operating responsibly in this issue, but regulators would like to ignore this asset class entirely. Keep it hidden from public view and simply advise them to ignore it. We will simply ignore it since it is unimportant. They can't just ignore it and hope it goes away because they can't. In my opinion, the fact that it has grown so large is a tremendous indication that we are indeed much closer to mainstream adoption than many people realize. Furthermore, it is critical to note that the SEC cannot prosecute companies such as Coinbase or Ripple. The SEC has an advantage in this area because of a lack of clarity. The SEC's need to take on Ripple and Coinbase exposes its vulnerabilities. The SEC does not want to see battles like these, and Ripple is kicking the SEC in the book. They're going to get their buttocks kicked thanks to Coinbase, I have a feeling. That suggests to me that the SEC is launching these attacks out of desperation rather than strength. Guys, to try to halt this sector, I don't think the SEC will be able to stop it in the end. There will be individuals who behave morally, and all the terrible people at the SEC who are attempting to prevent crypto will be washed away by the agency's revolving door, but the technology will not go away. The interim builders will keep on building, and this industry will only grow more strong until the SEC and other regulators are forced to cave. Biology expressed this with eloquence in this Twitter place, and I felt like you guys needed to hear it because I believe it is critical. Moving on, I'd want to talk about some shocking occurrences in the Coinbase community. We are now learning that Binance is being actively pursued by the SEC, and that the SEC has requested that all of Biden's assets be frozen, which is an extraordinary action. In essence, the SEC is arguing that Binance could fail at any time, and that the court should take extreme measures to protect retail investors by freezing all of Binance's assets now that we know this. According to other attorneys I've spoken to succeed in their endeavor to freeze all of the finance's assets, the situation at Binance would have to be substantially worse than it is essentially, The SEC is aiming to obtain these assets that were previously frozen. Lawyers who have expressed tremendous skepticism regarding finance have conceded that the SEC's odds of success are slim. However, what this shows us is that the SEC is undoubtedly upset with CZ for coming up with and identifying their FTX links, and I believe that what we're seeing is a result of that. Now that the SEC is actively retaliating in an attempt to destroy Binance, freezing Binance assets would surely be a murder attempt. Because the assets that SEC wishes to freeze are those of retail investors, it has nothing to do with defending those persons and is merely a surprise turn of events. It clearly shows where the Secretary's priorities are in several of these situations. They're deliberately working to ruin these businesses, and I have a feeling that this one is strongly tied to what Binance did to FTX and the links it revealed between FTX and the SEC. I'd like to discuss something very essential. Isn't the Ripple SEC case intriguing? Now let us continue that we know the documents will not be revealed as part of the settlement. It is worth noting that House Financial Services Chairman Patrick McHenry scheduled a hearing on cryptocurrencies on the same day those emails were supposed to be published. Because we will have these incriminating records made public in the middle of a Bitcoin hearing, I believe this will put significant pressure on the SEC. In my opinion, this is not a coincidence. In addition, to discuss these communications, John Deaton will be joined on a live webcast by several other notable figures in the cryptocurrency business. Guys, the key issue here is that the SEC has been engaging in conflicts of interest in bad faith regulation, and both Congress and retail are about to expose this in a massive press event. Now, one thing comes to me that I believe is critical to understand is that we have seen the US government, particularly the SEC, behave in very unusual ways in trying to block information, particularly bad information, from leaking. If you recall, Fried was supposed to testify before Congress when FTX first destroyed Sam Bankman, and I believe it's safe to say that a lot more information would have come to light if congressmen had been able to interview Sam under oath, but instead he was placed in a detention cell by the DOJ, who then immediately intervened, saying, "You know what, he's leaving forever, so you can't ask him questions." This was fairly intriguing because several members of Congress stated that we had some serious questions for him and that we required his answers. Have you been prepared to receive these emails? Just before this, when the news surfaced, the SEC was about to take a major hit. Surprisingly, the SEC settles the lawsuit to prevent the emails from becoming public. Now, I'll concede that many of the specialists who are following this case are skeptical. Don't expect the SEC to settle. They believe that SEC will be successful. I've always thought that the SEC would concur. And there's one of those things that makes me think about the case in general and some of the activity going on in the background. And inquire, was this always the plan? Guys, the number of docs I'm looking at right now that state the United States has 2 quick payment platforms astounds me. There are things like Swift and GPI, and many different businesses, like MasterCard and Visa, are working on ways to transport money all over the world. However, Ripple is the only company that shows next to the Fed the most frequently. This is incredible to me. It astounds me that the Federal Reserve is directly partnering with Ripple to establish a new payments platform while the SEC is suing Ripple, and there is so much ambiguity and FUD surrounding XRP. Entire nations and U.S. territories are forming CBCs on the XRP ledger, along with the understanding that XAP will most likely be the first. Cryptocurrency with absolute market clarity, all of that information. It makes you wonder how much of the Ripple SEC case was predetermined, guys, when you look back on it all, to unfold in this manner. What percentage of this was the United States saying, "Hey, we need a framework for cryptocurrencies in the United States. We can't let Congress impose rules on us." Arbitrary in its own right, this was always meant to be the situation that defined what a crypto commodity is. I have a feeling this case will be closed soon. We'll find out the answer. Does XRP achieve the needed level of certainty to conduct business effectively in the US? What kinds of announcements are possible? What can we expect from Ripple once the litigation is settled and the SEC stops bothering them. Guides, if everything goes as planned, I believe that massive adoption is just around the corner, and Ripple and XAPI will be leading the charge, gents. I sincerely thank you. I hope you enjoyed this update while you were here. Please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already.